Hello and welcome to the new video. If you have any questions about the video, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There is a lot of timestamps for you to check, such as item, gems. If you run into trouble recreating the build and you find yourself struggling with any kind of problems, there is a timestamps for you. Call it troubleshooting. Check this out. There is a lot of questions that people ask me on the live stream. So Custom Crate Ice Spear, I would say, is a pretty decent build for this league. After the changes with the Crucible, that we can see the percentage base, how much Crucible you can handle, and something between 85 to 90, my build in the current form can handle it very easily. Of course, every now and then you're gonna get that unique mob that has like too many modifiers and gonna be providing a little bit of a challenge, I would say, but otherwise the Crucible is very easy. As I'm freezing, chilling, everything, I have a high evasion, so very easy and fun build to play Crucible. With the current setup that I'm running, do not expect any crazy amount of quick farming bosses. I would say this is still like a very low budget for a custom crit, I would say, entry level build. But eventually I will be upgrading a lot of the gear, and I will make a update video as soon as I can get more currency. But for now, I'm quite happy with the gear that I have, and I can do all of the contents. I can farm out of the T60 maps, I can click all of my altars, I can do the league content such as crucibles, so I'm pretty happy with the build as it is. I was able to farm a couple of the maps such as like Guardians. I did one of the Maven invitation that went very badly, so you can see me failing a lot. But otherwise I'm gonna be improving the build, so eventually hopefully in my second video when I'm gonna be doing the update for the build, you will see all of the invitations, most of the bosses and any other content that I'm not able to do now due with my lack of currency. And this is my fight for first time. I'm doing the first Maven invitation. I still didn't had my thread of hope and a lot of different pieces of the gear, and I did fail it hard. On top of that, I did roll way too hard the map. Instead of making this a little bit easier, I made increase like life of the bosses and the damage, and you see me failing really hard because of that. For our Bandit choice, we're gonna be choosing to help Alira. For our Pantheon choice, there's a couple possibilities. You could go with Soul of Arakali, simply just to get a little bit more recovery and deal with the chaos damage. But if your chaos resistance is high, I would just ignore Soul of Arakali unless you in the situation that you need the extra chaos resistance. And I will simply go with the Soul of Solaris just for the mod that you cannot take extra critical strike. For our minor gods, Soul of Aberrant is a solid choice, but you can use whatever you want, as all of them they have a good use, such as you cannot be blind. It's a fairly decent Pantheon for us, but if you stick with the Soul of Aberrant, that's a good choice. For our Ascendancy point, we go Normal, Cruel, Merciless, Eternal Lab. So let's talk about what you can drop down for the passive tree if you don't have the currency currently available in your stash tab. First, you can drop down the Watcher's Eye. Since we have the Leech notes over here, the Watcher's Eye is a good quality to have, but it's not mandatory yet. In the later game, I would say it's highly desirable to have a Watcher's Eye. Then we can drop down the Thread of Hope. You're just gonna lose those 3 passive. That's a little bit yes and a little bit of damage. We can drop down the Cluster Jewel if you cannot buy it, but when you're gonna be buying this large cluster jewel, it's very important to take a note. You need to get yourself a blanket snow and a snowstorm. If you just get yourself a blanket storm and you think, oh yeah, I saved up about couple C on the jewel, let me disappoint you, because this blanket snow is gonna be over here and you're gonna be spending 2 extra points over here. Then you could drop down the Militant Fate as well, but that's like a massive amount of damage. Another thing, when you're gonna be buying the Militant Fate, look on the numbers. Sometimes you might encounter a number that starts from 880 something, and what's gonna happen is gonna change your power charge into a different passive. So that's like a big no-no. So you have to watch for that. So what else we can do? Later on, when you get actually everything up and running and you get yourself a unnatural instinct, you can drop down all of these accuracy nodes over here, and you can spec over here and get yourself a unnatural instinct, socket it in this socket jewel, and you're gonna get all of these nodes, including those accuracy nodes that we highly need, and this is gonna save up you a lot of points. The flask in these builds are very important. Starting up, we're gonna be using a Dying Sun for the 2 additional projectiles, and we're gonna be crafting from the crafting bench, used when you hit a rare or the unique enemy. This is only the situation when we need those 2 extra projectiles, as just clearing the generic map. We don't need to use a Dying Sun. So the next 3 flask is gonna be a Sapphire, we're gonna be using Jade, and we're gonna be using a Topaz. And all of those flasks you're gonna be applying enchant use when the charges reach full, and you're gonna be trying to get reduced charge use on all of those 3, and then you wanna try to get one of them like reduce curses. Then you wanna get yourself increase evasion and increase corrupting blood. Corrupting blood can be crafted in the bestiary, so whichever flask you're gonna get, like such as reduce charges, and then it has a open suffix, then you can just use it on your bench in the bestiary. And this flask is a very important, and it's absolutely mandatory, otherwise you're gonna run into the mana issue. You wanna grab yourself a diamond flask, you wanna craft yourself from a crafting bench, use when the charge reach full, then you wanna have yourself a T1. In my case, I have a T2. Chance to gain flash charge when you deal critical strike, and then you want to craft yourself from a crafting bench. If you have the flask from Katarina, reduce mana cost of skills. This will take your ice spear really low. With the combination of essence up, you will have no mana issues. In this section of the video, I'll be only talking about items. So let's start with our first item. It's Cosplays. So you want to buy this item it's a mandatory item, and you have to buy it. So what stats are we looking for? As long as you get your increased attack speed as high as you can afford with your currency, or simply buy the best cost speed that you can buy with your currency. Later on you can upgrade it, because this slot is always gonna stay the same. The second item is you buy yourself a Prism Guardian, and you want to get yourself as highest dexterity roll as you can. This will relax the dexterity requirement on your other items. So for our helmet slot, we're gonna be using Crown of Inward Eye. This is a temporarily solid choice of a helmet, as later on when I get a good currency, we're gonna be going with a double influence item. So this is a very flexible item, but if you're gonna be replicating the build, do not get any resistance on this slot, as this later on might just put you in some kind of trouble. So I would say just stick with the Crown of Inward Eye. That's a solid choice, and just move on. The next item is Presence of Chayula. This is a mandatory item, and you have to buy it no matter what. What you're looking to anoint is Essence Sap. This will help us with our mana leech, and you can apply the catalyst for the defense, I think, where it is, yeah, defense, and that will take the 20% to 24 of maximum lives converted to the energy shield. Moving on, Shavon's wrapping is a mandatory item. No matter what, you need it. This is a core piece of item. I don't want to spend too much time. It's just you have to buy it. Next item is Stampede, one of my favorite items for any cast-on crit budget build. You have to buy it no matter what. For me, this item is a mandatory item, and in this build especially, this is a mandatory item because we can anoint the boots, and I'm getting myself a piercing shot. This gives me a 2 pierces. The reason for that, simply I cannot afford the anomalous version of the Ice Spear that would give me 2 pierces on the quality, so I'm just using the standard 1 Ice Spear, and I'm getting my pierces on the boots. But if you can afford the Ice Spear with the 2 additional pierces as a quality, you could just simply swap the anointment on your boots for something else. Next up is our rings. For your rings, you're just looking for anything that you need. So on this ring, you're looking for open prefix, so you want to craft yourself a non-challenging skills. Look for any dexterity, cures, maybe flat yes, anything that you need, such as resistance. The second one follows the same thing, but then we want to buy a synthesized base that has a -3 total mana cost. This is a very important, as this will make your Cyclone skill cost 0, so you can Cyclone for free whenever you want. And then you're just looking for open prefix to get yourself the non-channeling skills. You're looking for any strength, resistance, energy sheet, whatever you can squeeze and you can buy from the trade or you can craft. Moving on to the gloves. For the gloves, you're looking for a very basic rare item, and the only mandatory stats that you're looking for is the increased attack speed on your gloves. And then you wanna have it as a T1, the 16, because we wanna hit the trigger cap as high as we can, and getting some increased attack speed on your gear is quite difficult. So one of those slots is the gloves. That's very easy to grab, and then you just wanna apply the herbs that inflict cold exposure, and the second one you wanna get a unnerve. I wasn't lucky enough yet to get it, but eventually I will upgrade my gloves when I get a little bit more orbs. For your belt slot, you're just looking for anything such as like your stats, I have like resistance, anything else that you can get. I would say do not get too much resistance on your belt, because eventually you might wanna upgrade to a Mage Blood, and if you have too much dexterity on your belt, or maybe strength or something else, might be a future problem, so please have that in mind. And that will be it for our items. So in this section of the video, I will go step by step which gems we're gonna be using in a very specific order in each specific item. So please listen carefully. What do I have to say about the gems? So let's start with the explanation what gems we're gonna be using Cosplay. First, you need to understand Cosplay triggers the socketed gems from the top to the bottom. So on the top, there should be always either a support gem or one of your trigger skills, such as Frostbolt, Freezing Pulse, Creeping Frost. So we're gonna be socketing Power Charge on Critical Strike. This game is a mandatory in this socket, as this is the reason how we generate on this build a power charges. And the gem can be in the first socket, whichever, because it doesn't make too much of a difference for us. Then we're moving on your generator, that's how I like to call them. You can use a Frostbolt, you can use Freezing Pulse, you can use Creeping Frost, or any other cold skill that you like. I'm mainly using Frostbolt because I'm using the interaction with the vortex. So you would want to socket your Frostbolt on the top, so Cosplay is gonna trigger the Frostbolt, and the Frostbolt is gonna be generating us power charges because it's linked with the power charge on the Critical Strike. And lastly, the last gem, it really depends on your gear. So let me explain. If you cannot have yourself a Frostbite on hit curse ring like I have over here, you would socket yourself a frostbite over here. So you do something like this. But in case you can get yourself a frostbite on hit, then the second step you would be going into the frost bomb, because you need the exposure. As you can see, the cold exposure apply minus 15 cold resistance. But you can get yourself a cold exposure on your gloves. So if you have a curse ring right over here, you have exposure on your gloves, then you simply go for another ice spear just simply to get additional damage. So next is our body armor. We're gonna be using Cyclone, and this is very important. We're gonna be using Awaken Cast on Crit, as we need the cooldown recovery. The gem provides us enough cooldown recovery for our build, so you no longer have to get it anywhere else, such as belt or boots. So I would just say, get yourself Awaken Cast on Crit. It's mandatory. Then we get using GMP. That simply gives us 4 extra projectiles that just damage. Then we're using Inspiration. This will reduce our mana cost, give us more damage, crit chance, overall good. Then we're using increased critical strike chance, because we wanna hit our crit cap as highest as we can. And we're using our Ice Spear. And next is the gems that we're gonna be using in our boots. I'm using Steel Skin on level 10, because I'm only having 85 strength. That's the reason. This is not necessarily any good or bad gem. You could replace this if you want. These are very flexible. I'm just using it for just to get the buff grants me bleeding immunity. But this is a flexible. You can check it out if you don't want. Then we're using Assassin's Mark linked with Mark on heat support. This combination gives us Assassin's Mark on rare enemies. And then we're using Frostblink, because we need some kind of movement skill to hop over some kind of ledges and so on. So lastly, it's our gems for our gloves. We're gonna be using Vortex, Bone Chill, Unbound Elements, and Cooling Strike. So if we look on the POB, the Bone Chill does increase our damage if we have socketed the Bone Chill with the Vortex. But I know recently Chris did say something on the live stream that not necessarily the Bone Chill works with the Vortex if you don't have the Unbound Elements. There is some kind of wacky interaction over here. But if you want to skip this, like the Bone Chill and Unbound Elements, because I'm not 100% sure that this combination actually works, then I would just keep the Vortex and the Cooling Strike, because the Vortex has a portion of the heat, so you can cool yourself at some kind of bosses, and you would have 2 spare sockets that you can use for anything else. In our helmet, we're gonna be keeping our auras. First aura, and I would say this is a mandatory, we're gonna be using Val Discipline. Val Discipline for the Crucible League gives us a solid defense, since we can use the Val Discipline. I would highly recommend using the Val Discipline. The second aura is Purity of Elements. We get some resistance and element immunities. Solid aura. Then we're using Herald of Ice. Simply that's gonna give us a little bit more damage and help out with the clearing the trash. The last aura is Precision, as we need some flat accuracy and give us a little bit of a crit chance. That's a solid choice as well. So the next, we're gonna be socketing Grace, Hatred, and Zealotry in our Prism Guardian. If you try to do just socket them three of them like that, then you try to reserve your life, you will end up something like this, that you cannot reserve your third aura. It says not enough life, and you might be wondering, okay, how can you do that? That is a very simple trick. First, you need the reservation mastery, that increased reservation, life reservation, the 20%. That's the first step. And the second one, you need a jewel like this that has an implicit increased reservation efficacy of skills. Please do not confuse this with reservation mana. It has to be exactly like this, the reservation efficacy of skills. As long as you have 2% and you can socket it somewhere on your tree, this will help you out reserving the last aura. That's gonna be the zealotry. And you still have some life left over here. So in this section of the video, I'll be talking about different problems that you might encounter or you overlooked something while recreating the builds. There's gonna be plenty of small timestamps that you can just click on it, because that's probably the most thing that you're gonna be looking is, let's say you're gonna be looking for your mana problem. So there's gonna be a small section of the video that's gonna be called something like a mana cost problem. So probably one of the questions is gonna be, how do we level up a character, since getting into the custom crit requires you to at least have a level 75 character before you can start putting all of the gears. And my recommendation would be to do something like this. Since our passive tree and the nodes that we're taking are very generic spell damage, energy shield, crit, stats and aura nodes, and our ascendancy involves around cold, one of the best skills would be Vortex, as you can place it on your left mouse and you can just start moving, dropping the Vortex, and this will get you to the campaign very easy, as long as you can just move, kill the monsters, and you will more or less complete the campaign. Probably the biggest problem will be the main act bosses, but if you have a friend or maybe a guildmate who could help you out with them, probably that would be great. So another question you might have, what is the cost of the build just to get into the custom crit? I would say it like this: if you can see in your inventory, in your stash tab, something between 10 to 15 divines, you should be alright. Of course, this really depends how the items being priced, because some items might go up in the price and some might go down in the price. So always check the item pricing by yourself, rather just relying on this that I'm telling you between 10 to 15 divines, because everything might go up and my estimated 10 to 15 divines might be absolutely bad. But on the other hand, everything can go down and the 10 divines might be good enough. So before you're attempting to recreate the build, check the price of the items and how easily you can recreate them. So you're probably wondering, what's the damage on the build? And the damage is 4.5 mil, as the current version shown on the video on the YouTube. And how do we calculate that? We have power charges. That's a no-brainer, as we're generating the power charges very easily. The enemy is blinded because I have a watcher side that gives me the chance to blind. Enemy is chilled. Since we are doing a cold damage, we're always chilling the enemy. We have exposure. You get your exposure either from your gloves or your frost bomb. So those are very easy ticks that we can do. The only thing that I don't like about our damage, it's the vortex over here with the bone chill. Because if we take the bone chill, our damage drops down. But I know, like in the past, Chris told on the live stream that there is some kind of issue with the effect of the chills and the bone chill, and sometimes the bone chill might not actually work properly, so it might not give you the damage. So I would say take it with a pinch of salt, because I'm not sure if the bone chill actually works in our advantage, giving us the increase, or it's absolutely just a waste of a slot in our gloves. So you might be wondering, how do we get Leech? The first and the simplest option is we get in this cluster over here with the mastery for the Leech. I'm not sure yet if the 10% of instant Leech is the right choice. Maybe the 25% of maximum life and energy shield Leech would be better. This needs to be tested and maybe tweak around a little bit. Probably in the future, when I will make another video, I will talk about it. The second option, we're getting ourselves a watcher side with a discipline mod with the gain 29 energy shield hit by the while affected by discipline. This is a great watcher side. I will always highly recommend having a watcher side like this, because combination, the gain from the discipline mod and the leech from those nodes over here makes you very, very tanky, and you can quickly leech all of your energy shield when you get hit, especially on the crucible when you're gonna be getting hit quite often, and sometimes the hits are really big. This really makes you way more tankier. probably when you're gonna be recreating the build and you will not listen to exactly what I'm gonna say, you're gonna run in this problem. And if you leave a comment and I will give you the timestamp to exactly to this time, shame on you. Please listen, because probably what you're gonna do, you're just gonna socket. Oh, I'm gonna socket my free 50% auras on my priest guard, and then I'm gonna be bam bam. Oh look, I cannot use my zealotry. There's not enough life. And then you're probably gonna be very confused. How come I can have those auras and you trying to do the same thing? There's two things that you need to do. First one, you need to take the mastery for the increased life reservation. That's the first step. The second step, you need to get yourself a corrupted jewel with this modifier. Increase reservation efficacy of skills. It has to be exactly this mod. It cannot be reservation of mana, it has to be reservation of skills, because this is a global modifier that counts to your life. So once you buy yourself this jewel and you're gonna socket it, tada! Now we can use zealotry, and we can have 3 big auras on our Prism Guardian. So hopefully this is gonna be your last problem, but if you have more problems, just leave a comment below and I will try to help you out. So if you're running a mana issue such as your spells are costing too much and you're constantly stopping up with your casting of your Ice Spear because you have no mana, there's probably you didn't do one of the things that I'm gonna explain. The first one, like I said in the Flask section, this Flask is a mandatory. We need that reduced mana cost during the Flask all the time. So this first step. The second step, we need to have 2 rings with the open prefix so we can craft ourselves a non-channeling skills, and we need 2 of the rings over here. And lastly, we need Essence Sap, because we need to leech somehow the mana. Not much, but we need the leech. So as soon as you have the Essence Sap, the 2 rings, and the mana flask is always up, the cost of the skills is only 6 mana. So you can out leech that 6 mana all the time. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.